Hey everybody, this is your Digital Super Saiyan 3 back here with another video, and I gotta say, happy 2021 everyone. And now I'm going to do my January pay-per-view review. And what pay-per-view am I doing for January? WCW Souled Out 1998 took place January 24th, 1998 in the Hera Arena in Dayton, Ohio. On commentary, you got Tony Schiavone, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Oh, and this show was brought to you by Snickers, because at the bottom of the Sold Out logo, you would see the Snickers logo. And throughout the majority of 1998 WCW, it was WCW, NWO, for majority of the pay-per-views because they would have both the WCW and the NWO logo together through the majority of the year. So, let's get on to it. Our opening match is a 6-man cruiserweight luchador style, or 8-man tag match, I'm sorry. It was an 8-man luchador style match as you have the babyface team of Liz Mark Jr., Chavo Guerrero Jr., Juventud Guerrera, and Super Calo defeating La Parca, Psychosis, Silver King, and El Dandy in a great 8-man luchador style tag match. This was an awesome tag match. To open up the show, everyone got their licks in. You got Chavo Guerrero getting the victory for his team, hitting a tornado DDT out of the corner, taking out Psychosis, pinning Psychosis for the 1, 2, 3, and then afterwards, La Parca just beats everyone up with a steel chair because, that was his whole thing. He used his steel chair. Everyone got a chance to shine in this match. It was an awesome 8-man tag match. Next up, we got Chris Benoit defeating Raven in an anything goes match, a no disqualification match. Yeah, they were supposed to have a match with each other back at Starrcade 1997, but that never happened. Instead, Benoit ended up having to face Perry Saturn in Raven's place. But, this was a great match. The flock was barred from ringside. Raven and Benoit just beat the hell out of each other. They used a steel chair. Benoit locked in the crossface on Raven. Raven laughed his ass out until he passed out in Benoit's crossface. An awesome match. Benoit, Raven, they just put on a hell of a good match. And then Kidman came out from the flock, and he tries to help Raven, and then he gets thwarted by Dean Malenko, who comes to Benoit's aid, and then they fight off the flock, and then Benoit and Malenko, I'm sorry, had a moment of respect amongst each other, so really good moment and really good match. Now we get to our first of 2 title matches on the show. Our first of 2 title matches, you got Chris Jericho defeating Rey Mysterio Jr. via submission to capture the Cruiserweight Championship in an awesome match. Now, despite the fact that Rey was injured with a knee injury, yes, a knee injury with Rey hampers this match a bit, but seeing that most of 1998, Rey was he was dealing with his knee injury, he still manages to finish this damn match, and it was still a good outing by Rey. And, Jericho, he reverses the top rope Hurricanrana into the walls of Jericho from the top. And then Rey taps out, and then afterwards, Jericho just injures the knee even further just to have Rey take time off for that knee injury. Now, yeah, Rey had injured this on Thunder wrestling against Eddie Guerrero. Oh yeah, and by this time Thunder had just debuted in this year. So next up, we get this segment about the announcement of the very fate of the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, of what is going to be going on, especially since this is following up Starrcade 1997 and that screwball finish. And yes, James J. Dillon basically stripped basically had to vacate the title because he's, in charge of WCW at the time. And, basically he had to vacate the title after Sting's victory at Starrcade because of the messy finish and the way things went at Starrcade. So, James J. Dillon, along with Roddy Piper, called out Sting, called out Hogan, and Scott Hall, since Scott Hall was also the number one contender. He won the World War III match back in November. And Roddy Piper makes the announcement that Hogan and Sting would face each other again at Super Brawl, just to have a clear-cut champion. And they're going to fight until we get a champion. By order of Commissioner Roddy Piper. However, Scott Hall is disgusted by this. He walks off and leaving Hogan and Bischoff there. And Hogan and Bischoff they run off, and we would see them again later with Kevin Nash in the Giants match. Now we get to the second of our 2 title matches on this show, because we don't really get that many title matches on this show. For the WCW World's Television Championship, you have Booker T defeating Rick Martel in an absolutely good match. In a very, very, very good match here. Booker T and Rick Martel, what a match they have here. They have a return match at the Super Brawl show as well, at the Super Brawl pay-per-view in February following this, but this was a good match here. Rick Martel, one of the most underrated men in all of professional wrestling, one of the most underrated workers. This was Rick Martel in the twilight years of his career, and man, he looked great in this match. He still had a great pep in his step against Booker T here. And, and this was following after he was attacked by Saturn on Thunder, or was it Nitro, and put through a plate glass door. This was following an attack that was issued by Saturn. And Booker T ends up winning with the Harlem Hangover, and we get a sign of respect afterwards. I mean, that was what it was all about, right? But then, let alone and behold, Saturn comes out. He attacks Rick Martel. Booker T comes back. He basically runs Saturn off to help Rick Martel out. So, yet again, another awesome moment here. Next up, we get Larry Zbyszko defeating Scott Hall via disqualification. So, Scott Hall in his corner had Louis Spicolli. In Larry Zbyszko's corner, let alone and behold, we thought Ted DiBiase was going to be in his corner, but no. It turns out it was actually Dusty Rhodes, who hops off the commentary table. And, this was a decent match for what it was, until the finish where Zbyszko had Scott Hall locked in a submission. He put him in the sleeper hold, and Scott Hall couldn't get out. Spicolli gets in, and he saves Scott Hall, and then it causes the DQ. Then lots of craziness happens, and then let alone and behold, Dusty Rhodes, when we see Dusty Rhodes come in, he hits a bionic elbow on Spicolli. Right as we thought he was going to hit Scott Hall, he accidentally hits Zbyszko until Dusty takes off his jacket and he's wearing an NWO shirt. Yeah, we see Dusty Rhodes wearing an NWO shirt. The man who had objected to whatever the NWO had been doing for 2 years, now all of a sudden is a member. How could they have gotten to Dusty is the question. And why was Dusty even a member of the NWO is beyond me. No one wanted to boo Dusty, because Dusty Rhodes, if you've looked at his career in the 80s, he's been known for being a babyface. What makes Dusty Rhodes a fucking heel? He's not a fucking heel. it's one of the more confusing heel turns, but does it take away from the absolute enjoyment of this show? Not at all, not at all. But still, it was a really confusing moment for me, and probably a lot of other people if you look back at this heel turn. Now we get to our first NWO versus WCW match. Well, our second of NWO versus WCW matches. As it's a six-man tag match, as you got the Steiner Brothers and Ray Traylor with Ted DiBiase defeating, and I quote, Conan, Buff Bagwell, and Scott Norton. With Vincent. Yeah, this was really not that great of a match, and the confusing thing was, the odd behavior that has been going with Scott Steiner, as he's been flexing a lot lately, as he's been being more of a show-off. And yes, distrust between the Steiner brothers was starting to come full circle, and it would eventually come full circle at Super Brawl the following month in February, when Scott would turn heel on his brother Rick and join the New World Order. Now, we get into our first of the triple main event. Our first match, it's a battle of the big men. Kevin Nash defeating the Giant in a solid big men match. I gotta admit, this match is well known for this really, really, really scary moment where the Giant, aka the Big Show, gets powerbombed by Kevin Nash with this botched powerbomb after he got poured hot coffee all over him, and then a low blow, and then finally you see Nash try to pick the big man up and doesn't get the full extension of the powerbomb, but instead drops the Giant on his neck, leading to the Giant getting injured. And the Big Show, aka the Giant, he is very fucking lucky. Like, his wrestling career could have ended there. He is so lucky that he was able to wrestle for 2 more decades after this. And I gotta admit, the Big Show is just plain flat out lucky that, he managed to recover from this. Because this was a lot more scarier than the botched pile driver on Steve Austin back at SummerSlam 1997. And yeah, Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff were at ringside. Hogan distracted the referee. We saw Bischoff get chokeslammed by the Giant. But yeah, we saw the use of a pitcher of hot coffee be used, and that led to the Giant having his skin scalded, but at least the Giant recovered from that. I've spent enough time talking about it, but next up we get, this was actually his debut match in WCW as Bret Hart, the 5-time World Wrestling Federation champion, defeat the 13-time WCW World Champion in Ric Flair. So we see Ric Flair get beaten by Bret Hart, and they had such a great wrestling match. Flair, he was still able to go at this point. This was Flair's best match all year long. We even saw, Flair attack Jim the Anvil Neidhart just to send a message to Bret Hart. This was quite a debut for Bret Hart, and we saw Bret Hart lock in the sharpshooter to get the victory over Ric Flair. It's a shame that the rest of Bret Hart's run in WCW was not as good, was not really that great due to, I don't know, backstage politics or him just being hard to work with. And it's depending on whose story you believe. Either you believe Brett's story or Eric Bischoff's story. Then we get into our main event, our final main event. We got Lex Luger defeating the Macho Man Randy Savage. Okay, this was the weakest of the three of the triple main event. It was not bad, but just certainly not the best. And 98 was definitely not Macho's year. It was definitely not a great year for Macho. I mean, like Rey Mysterio, Macho was also... Randy Savage was also dealing with a knee injury here, so... Or he would be dealing with a knee injury for the rest of the... For the rest of the way. He would be out until he would return in 1999 at Spring Stampede, but still... Yeah, Savage, Hall tries to help Savage, and Hogan says no. He prevents Hall from helping Savage, and Savage gets locked in the torture rack by Luger. Lex Luger gets the victory. Then we see full-on NWO come out to beat up on Lex Luger, and then finally Sting comes out to help Lex Luger. Sting and Luger fight off the NWO, and the show ends. So, that was Souled Out 1998. Final thoughts, it's a solid show. It was definitely better than Starrcade 1997, and it was one hell of a way for WCW to start their 1998 run for their pay-per-views. Anyway, this has been your Digital Super Saiyan 3, and I'll see you guys in February for WWE No Way Out 2003. See ya!